Welcome to Satsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Satsunami. I'm Satsunami and joining me today for, quite honestly, a long overdue topic is my very good friend Adam.
Hello, hello. Good to be back.
And my other friend, who you might have heard on the channel before, Greenshield. Greenshield, welcome back.
Dope! Hey everyone, finally get to talk about The Simpsons. About time.
As I said, long overdue because we all absolutely love this show. We are, as the cool kids say, very old because we probably have been watching this really since it came out. Well, not that far back, not since the 80s. But yeah, how is everyone?
I'm not too bad, thank you.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I wouldn't say I was watching it during the Tracy Ullman run, but I probably picked it up a fair bit later, probably in the early 2000s for me. So
Greenshield, don't be modest.
I know you guys have a couple of years seniority on me in that respect. So like when what we're going to be talking about occurred before I even started watching the show.
We have indeed been watching this since late 90s, early 2000s, and is it right to say that this has been so I'll start with you, Greenshield. Is it right to say that this show has been a significant part of your life?
Yes, I would say that The Simpsons is probably my favorite show ever. It often does not get talked about today in the same light amongst like the best TV sitcoms or TV shows because of people thinking about its legacy and how it kind of deteriorated in the later seasons, which I still believe are watchable, but not the same quality as the early seasons. I think just purely based on the impact that they had for those first, I'll even say 12 seasons, I think it goes down as the best show ever. So I would watch it every day because it would be airing on both Sky One and Channel 4 each day. So I would be able to watch multiple episodes a day. And then I would try and stay tuned to watch the newest episode that came out on Sundays on Sky One. And so it was a very important part of my day and a part of my week. Most of my jokes that I referenced today come from The Simpsons. I used to own a lot of the DVDs, do lots of rewatches, so I'd be watching it each day on the TV as it aired in syndication, and then I'd also have the DVDs, which I'd frequently put it in and watch. So I was quite into The Simpsons mania.
I have to admit, I would agree with that as well. Growing up, when I say my family, because I don't think my mum likes this show very much. She thinks it's okay, but I think in terms of coming together as kind of like a family and watching it, it's definitely an interesting like time capsule, depending on what era of The Simpsons you watch. And I remember the very first season that I bought of The Simpsons was probably season 3. I remember it came in like the kind of pink box, and I really just watched those DVDs religiously. I just kept watching them over and over, and then I got season 4, season 5. I kept building up until I want to say about season 11, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. I reference The Simpsons quite a lot, especially in the seasons that we're going to talk about today, and ever since then it's been a major part of my life. But what about you, Adam? Has The Simpsons played a significant role in your life as well?
Certainly for a while it did. I remember, I think when I first came across Simpsons, I was probably 7, I think, into primary school. I remember some kids in my class talking about it. And before it appeared on things like Channel 4 and stuff, it used to be on BBC 2, very popular channel in the UK here. And it would appear on, I think, about 6 o'clock or something like that. So I eventually managed to catch some episodes after school. And that's where I sort of fell in love with it. But BBC 2 obviously wasn't showing like the most recent episodes. It was showing episodes from quite a few years in the past, which I didn't realize at the time. So I have a very particular fondness for a very particular era of The Simpsons. That kind of, well, I suppose that kind of golden age, that kind of mid to kind of late 90s. Yeah, I never really watched like the new seasons as they came out. I didn't have Sky when I was growing up. And eventually it kind of moved off BBC 2 and it went to Channel 4, as Greenshields was saying. And I caught some of it there. But my interest kind of faded after a while. I moved on to other things. I moved on to other animated shows. Like I love The Simpsons, but I'm probably more of a South Park fan, I have to admit, than a Simpsons fan. But I still really treasure those kind of earlier seasons and those episodes. And it certainly was very, very important. It was something I really look forward to each day, after school for a good few years. So it was very important to me, certainly at a kind of formative point of my life.
And it is safe to say that you would be hard-pressed to find someone who actually didn't know about this show, because even in the darkest reaches of Scotland, I honestly can't think of anyone who either didn't know about this show or, who didn't reference it or have some kind of merchandise, whether it was the show, whether it was Simpsons Hit and Run, the video game, or even the arcade game if you want to, go further and further back. I actually remember seeing like a physical arcade machine with that game. Have any of you guys seen it?
The swimming pool in the city that I grew up in used to have one. I doubt it still has it, but it did for a while.
Have you seen it, Greenshield?
Yeah, I've seen the arcade game. I don't remember if I ever played it. I know a fair bit about it. I've heard other people talk about it on podcasts and on TV shows. They've brought up this arcade game because it's so important to a lot of people's experience with Simpsons growing up that they had that arcade game. Yeah, I think I actually did play it. I think I have played it at an arcade before. Not that I had the opportunity to go to many arcades, so I don't remember when it would be, but I have a very distinct memory of playing a Simpsons arcade game, so I think it must have been the one that everyone talks about.
Not even just with the arcade game. The Simpsons was just everywhere. I remember growing up and actually collecting the comics of it. It's kind of weird because this could be a whole episode in itself, but I remember reading the comics and falling in love with these stories that could have easily been episodes. And then as the kind of show declined in quality, so too did the comics. Like the comics got a lot thinner and you were kind of like, well, there's no point in buying them because it was, it wasn't as good anymore. And that's kind of, I think that's kind of the controversial thing about The Simpsons. And I'm using that very lightly, but it's the kind of thing that a lot of people debate about. They'll say, when was The Simpsons good? Was it from season 1 through 10? Was it only from season 3 to 9? Was it up to 11 if you're being generous? There's this whole debate about this kind of thing, and that's what we're not really going to be deep diving into that question today, but what we are going to be doing is we are basically going to be recounting our favourite seasons of the show, what actually made us fall in love with the show. It's safe to say none of us have gone to double digits, have we?
Nope.
No, as I mentioned before, I am not part of the hate for some of the and I say later seasons. I even going into like the seasons in the 20s and 30s, like they're watchable. But I think people are overly harsh about the teen seasons, and I have a particular love for season 12. It is not one that I picked for today, but I think it does deserve an honorable mention. But what did you guys pick in the end?
Oh, that's a secret we're going to have to find out in the next episode. No, I'm only joking. Will we reveal our top picks right after these adverts?
Let's do it.
So hold on to your hats, get a Duff beer for legal reasons, that is a joke, and we will indeed be back right after these messages. Welcome to Satsunami, a variety podcast that talks about topics from gaming and films to streaming and general interests.
Previously on Chatsunami, we discussed Game of the Decade, Deadly Premonition, the romantic thriller Birdemic, and listen to us get all sappy as we discuss our top 5 Christmas films.
If that sounds like your cup of tea, then you can find us on Anchor, Spotify, YouTube, and all good podcast apps. As always, stay safe,
stay awesome, and most importantly,
stay hydrated.
We are Beer and Chill Podcast.
Podcast where we review TV shows, games, movies, and whatever else takes our fancy.
So what are you waiting for? If you're a cool kid like us, you're gonna listen to the Beer and Chill Podcast. You can get it anywhere from Spotify all the way to your grandmother's radio. My name is Jan.
And I'm Craigie C.
And we are
Beer and Chill.
I hope everyone enjoys the Manscaped commercial that we put in there.
Manscaped. I'm only kidding, but if Manscaped, if they want to sponsor us, then yeah, feel free. Anyway, sorry, my begging for subscriptions aside. So yeah, will we just dive right into it?
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
The way we're going to tackle this is in chronological order. Turns out by luck of the draw, I am first. You guys ready to hear what I picked?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're totally going to be surprised. I definitely didn't tell you off the recording. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Get your best gasps possible. I chose season 7.
I, for one, am shocked.
What?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for humouring me in my own podcast. Personally, for me, although I think that seasons probably 3 to 10, I would say, are my personal favourites. There are, quite frankly, a whole load of episodes that deserve, honourable mentions, deserve, recognition. But the reason I chose season 7 is purely from, I would say, a sappy reason, because I feel as if season 7 is one of those seasons that has the most emotionally resonating episodes of the entire franchise. Of course, you two will be familiar with some of the episodes I'm talking about. You've got episodes like Home Sweet Home Diddly Dum Doodly, which I am not saying again. You can look it up, which is, of course, the episode where Homer and Marge get Bart and Lisa taken away from them, and Flanders has to take care of them and everything. We've got the iconic Bart sells his soul, which is just such a poignant episode. We've got Lisa the vegetarian, where Lisa kind of goes through these phases of questioning who she is, her choices in life. Marge Not Be Proud, which is another favourite, where Marge finds out that Bart is shoplifting. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but long story short, some of you might be wondering out there, and especially you, Greenshield, because I told you my favourite episode this season, why aren't I mentioning it? But we'll get onto that. But personally for me, The Simpsons has always been one of those shows that, obviously the comedy is first, but I feel as if the one thing that people don't give this show credit for is the emotional aspect and the kind of real aspect. Greenshield, would you agree with that?
There are a lot of emotional episodes that really hit home. In particular, the season 7 that you picked has a lot of those. I would argue that each of our seasons has one or two of those that hits really hard. Obviously, we'll get into those a bit more when we get around to each of our individual seasons. But yeah, there are some really lovely kind of episodes, real sappy episodes, which I think is quite common in your season. I think due to the writer that was the head writer of that season. I'm drawing a blank on who was the head writer for season 7, but I think they were quite keen on these more sappy endings, which I know some of the other writers who ended up going over to work on the likes of Futurama close to this time after the season, they left and went to do that, which was sort of, you see a lot of sappy episodes in that following this, and less so in The Simpsons.
Yeah, it did seem as if, although the following seasons do have absolutely fantastic moments, there are definitely scenes in it where you just kind of think, okay, this is more of a comedy show now than a kind of emotional tugging at your heartstrings kind of thing. But yeah, I totally agree. I think it definitely is a head writer who wanted to kind of get to the emotional core of these episodes and these characters. And I have to admit, and Adam as well, feel free to jump in, but do you feel as if the earlier seasons of The Simpsons didn't really tap into kind of characters? They were more kind of being used as instruments for the punchline rather than kind of treating them as characters.
Yeah, you two are probably better qualified to answer this than me. But from what I understand, were those seasons not more kind of leaning into satire, and the characters were being used to kind of, as part of it, as you say, instruments to kind of satirize American society and culture and things like that? While obviously by kind of this time, by season 7 and some of these sort of later early seasons, they'd kind of moved a little bit past that to make these characters more kind of rounded and fleshed out.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. I think it was a case of the early seasons were a satire on the sitcom. By the later seasons, it started becoming its own thing, and in some ways it kind of became what it was originally satirizing, and in other ways it kind of morphed into its own behemoth. There's some really great episodes in the early seasons. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is from season 2 is Lisa's Substitute. I don't know if you guys remember that one that well, but that's actually probably one of my favorite episodes of the show. Season 2 is not strong enough with that to make it my favorite season, but it has a very, very beautiful message and very, very sweet ending.
Because you even get episodes I think Bart gets an F. I think that's season 2. Am I right in saying?
Yes, it is.
Because you get a very emotional moment from that episode where, of course, as the title suggests, Bart gets an F. Yes, spoilers. And of course, he's supposed to get a particular grade to move on from the 4th grade. I know, ironic considering he's never graduated in the whole run of the show, but yeah, that moment at the end where he breaks down and he's kind of crying and everything, and it's just very emotional. But then as the show kind of progressed, as you said, Adam, it's more of a satire on American society, so much so that I think it was George Bush Sr. that actually criticised it live on TV. And of course, as you know, there's the famous retort from The Simpsons and everything. I feel as if in season 7, going back to why I chose this season, I feel as if this is where they perfectly capitalise on tugging at the heartstrings, but not in a manipulative way, if that makes sense. You really care for these characters, even though there's a lot of comedy in Home Sweet Home Diddly Dum Doodly. Yeah, try saying that 3 times. You get the kind of heartbreak that Marge and Homer are going through losing their children, even though Homer's very, let's face it, by today's standards, abusive. What's the phrase you use, Adam? It was a different time.
It was the mid-90s. We didn't know any better.
I know, we just didn't know. But no, jokes aside, another episode which, I don't know why, but this one really has been burned into my memory. It's Bart Sells His Soul. That one, of course, is where Bart, as a kind of joke, he writes down Bart's soul on a piece of paper and he sells it to Milhouse, and then he starts having an existential crisis of faith. I mean, what did you think of that episode, Greenshield?
I guess I've not seen that one in quite a while, so I would need to go back and see it from a more contemporary kind of viewpoint that I have, because I probably haven't seen that since I was quite young, where I didn't fully understand what the show was going for at the time. I mean, it's a pretty simple message, so I did, even as a child, I did kind of understand in some ways, but I don't remember it hitting that hard in terms of other episodes I saw, especially from season 7. What I did when I learned what seasons both of you selected, I went through and made a list of all the episodes and highlighted the ones that I think from both my season and also both of yours, which hit hard for me from all of those seasons. And I didn't find that one in particular to hit that hard for me, but maybe that just requires me to go back and rewatch it.
That's something I think I would say about some of these episodes of season 7. I think they hit a bit differently as you get older.
Absolutely.
Funny you bringing up that Marge Be Not Proud, because I remember really disliking that one when I was a kid. I remember it was one that used to get shown quite a lot on things like BBC Two and stuff, and I always remember being like, oh, I really don't like this episode. But I bet now if I went back, I've not seen it since I was a kid, but I bet if I went and watched it now, it would hit so much more differently. I'd probably get a real new appreciation for it.
No, I'm totally the same. Funny you say that, because I also remember that. It was an episode that, it was always shown in BBC Two and Channel 4 and things. And it would always be around Christmas, I think. Because, as Bart's, he wants the latest video game, Bone Storm, and he ends up getting, is it Putting Challenge or something? It's just such an amazing joke by the end
Grill
of it.
House.
I mean, you've even got is that the same episode where Marge is looking at the diamond ring and Homer says, I'm sure someone will get you it. And then in his head he's like, she'll be really excited when she opens that ironing board cover. Or something. Tons of amazing jokes in that one. But see, going back to watch it, it just, I agree with you, Adam. When you were watching it as a child, you kind of think, oh, great, Bart's getting into trouble. We just wanted the video game. But something that is quite chilling going back to watch that episode is just Marge's reaction of just complete, total coldness. Marge is usually quite a warm character. She supports her children and everything. And then all of a sudden, she just turns into this completely cold, cutting off Bart from this kind of affection and things, and obviously resets into the status quo. But it's just a side of Marge you don't see, and it's really interesting seeing it as you get older, because you're completely right, Adam. Watching some of these episodes as a child, in fact, that's something our good friend Craigie C says in the Beer and Chill podcast. He keeps messaging me every so often saying that we are closer to Homer's age now than we are to Bart's age. Constantly reminding us how close we are to getting older, but
by far, I think Bart's, well, I know for a fact Bart's 10, and Homer, I think, is canonically 37 or 38.
I think so, yeah.
And so, yeah, We're a lot closer to Homer's age than
Wow,
Bard's
that's
age.
depressing.
Depressing. But, I'm not going to sit here and say, all of the episodes in this season are absolutely knocking out the park. Even though this season has 22 short films about Springfield, the infamous Steam Tams episode, where I have to admit the rest of that episode is kind of hit or miss, but obviously everyone remembers the Steam Tams the most.
Aurora Borealis?
In our podcast? Yes.
Can I see it?
No. Anyway, our esteemed podcast aside here, as I said, I'll go through some honourable mentions in this season because there's loads of them. But the Marge Not Be Proud, as I said, scenes from the class struggle in Springfield, while it's not the best and most emotional hitting, it is quite interesting again to see Marge become a focal point of trying to become someone she's not and everything. And again, it's something you kind of appreciate when you're older as opposed to watching it as a child. A Fish Called Selma, where Selma's getting used by Troy McClure. Summer of 4'2", which I have to say, out of this list, is probably the weakest one. But
hold on a second. A Fish Called Selma. Isn't that the episode where you find out that Troy McClure has a weird thing for fish?
Yep.
Say he likes to sleep with the fishes.
Yeah.
When I said sleep with the fishes, I meant no, please.
It's just dawned on me that's there's a connection there in the title. I don't know if that's just me being incredibly dense, or if that was hidden there. Because obviously it's a pun on a fish called Wanda, which I understood years and years ago. But I didn't realize about the fish love aspect to it.
You can't see it right now, but I'm making the dud face.
How
A
dare you.
slow smile of you got the dud. No, honestly, it's amazing when that happens. Of course, there is one particular episode, before we move on and the listeners at home get sick of my voice, there's one particular episode I do want to hone in on, and it is by far one of my favourite episodes of the entire show. That, of course, being Mother Simpson. Basically, the plot is that Homer, in one of his hijinks, pretends to kill himself for a day off of work, which is crazy in its own right, but that leads him to reunite with his mother, who left him as a young child and everything. Although there are some bits that could have been done better in that episode, I don't know. I feel as if this episode, even back then, but more so as an adult, just hits so hard because we get Homer, who he doesn't seem to have, when he's around his mother, and I don't know if you've noticed this in the episode, he seems quite childish in the episode. Obviously it's Homer Simpson, he is quite childish, but he just seems very innocent and kind of, because there's a particular scene where he's talking to Marge. Marge is asking, well, why has your mother come back after all this time? And of course he turns around and he says, I don't know, maybe she just didn't love me, maybe I just wasn't a good son. And that is really hard hitting stuff for a show like The Simpsons. And obviously there's the comedic bits like Mr. Burns playing on Waterloo and the big tank and things like that, and the post office scene. That ending as well, that ending just really gets to me. So much so that I was showing Adam and Greenshield my screensaver before we came on, and it's a picture someone's edited where it's a picture of the stars, but at the bottom it's just Homer kind of sitting in his car looking up at the stars. And for me personally, that just seems it's just a very powerful scene, because at the end, of course, he says goodbye to his mom and everything, and he just silently looks up as the credits play above him, and there's just it's not really, there's no joke, there's no punchline. It just lets you kind of sit there and appreciate the episode. But before we go on and talk about your guys' picks, is there anything you want to say about this particular episode?
I don't have anything in particular to comment on Mother Simpson. I think you touched on a lot of what I feel as well. I think it is an incredibly touching episode. It explores Homer's mother, which we didn't really know anything about previously, because you've been introduced to Abe Simpson very early on in the series. Grandpa Simpson, as he's also known, is one of the best characters in the show. He's absolutely wonderful how they write him. But we got that father figure, which kind of demonstrated why Homer is the way he is. When you see flashbacks to how he was raised by Abe, but you don't really understand then where Homer's mother was in this. So getting that character introduced provides a different perspective on who Homer was and why he became the way he was in that regard as well, because he's the child of both both parents, and you understand like the way he finds life so charming and funny at times is because of his mother, whereas his sort of angry, cynical side comes from his father.
Yeah, there's nothing I can really add. you both basically explained why it's a great episode. It's been a long time since I've seen that one, and just hearing you two speak about it, I definitely want to go back and rewatch it, because again, I think it's one that I will get such a new appreciation for. Like, I remember enjoying it when I saw it when I was younger, but I really think this is an episode that I'd get a complete new like understanding and love for watching it now.
So yeah, without any further ado, let's move on to the next one. So I think the next one is Adam.
So honestly, looking at the 3 seasons that we've each picked for the best season, there's no wrong choice, but there is a right choice, and that's season 8, which I think has a claim to be one of the best seasons of television ever, probably. I think a lot of people would agree with that. So let me start by just reading out some of the episodes that are in season 8. So we've got Treehouse of Horror 7, which is probably the best. I would argue the best of the Treehouse episodes. That's the one with Hugo, Bart's evil twin, Lisa creating a new species on her tooth, and then the Kodos and Kang infiltrating the American election. We've got You Only Move Twice with Scorpio. We've got the Homer They Fall, where Homer becomes a boxer. We've got Bart After Dark, A Millhouse Divided, Draw Me Your Best Version of Dignity. We've got Hurricane Neddy. We've got The Springfield Files, The Mysterious Voyage of Homer, Mountain of Madness, Homer's Phobia, Brother from Another Series, In Marge We Trust, Grade School Confidential, and my personal favourite, which is Homer's Enemy. It's just a season that's jam-packed with iconic episodes. Its consistency is unmatched, I think, compared to any other series of the Simpsons. The lowest rated episode on IMDb is one called Simpsons Spin-Off Showcase near the end of the season, and that's still rated at 7.2 out of 10, which I think just speaks to the quality of the season, that's the lowest rated one. Going back to IMDb, the highest rated episode of The Simpsons ever is You Only Move Twice in season 8, and the second highest is Homer's Enemy, also in season 8. So it's such a quality season with just amazing iconic episodes. Look at the characters as well. Like, The Simpsons has had a lot of great kind of one-off or kind of sporadically appearing characters, but they're like, season 8 is just filled with them. So for instance, we've got Prohibition Agent Rex Banner, we've got the Mary Poppins parody Sherry Bobbins, we've got the legendary Johnny Cash playing a mystical talking coyote, you've got Ned Flanders' therapist Dr. Foster, the Den, may God have mercy on us all. We've got Cockamamie's collectibles owner John, we've David Hyde Pierce as Cecil Terwilliger, Sideshow Bob's brother, and so him and Kelsey Grammer get to recreate the kind of electric chemistry from Frasier. Frank Grimes, my personal favourite, and of course Hank Scorpio, who is probably one of the greatest one-off characters in any TV series ever. Just such a fantastic character, so funny and so well written. And it was just, season 8 was a season that was just built on these like fantastic characters, and I think that's what makes it so popular and makes its quality so strong and makes such a lasting appeal to the season. Looking as well, there was some great kind of narrative arcs in season 8, and it felt like each member of the Simpsons family was allowed to grow during this season. For instance, so we've got Homer's realization of the kind of stupidity and the foolishness of his kind of homophobia in Homer's Phobia, and then we also get as well in the episode called The Mysterious Voyage of Homer, we get to see his kind of fears about whether he and Marge are actually soulmates, and the kind of resolution to that arc. And then as well in You Only Move Twice, we get to see him kind of realizing that he needs to prioritize his family over his working for Scorpio, despite how great it is and how much he loves it. For Lisa gets to become really becomes the family's moral compass in this season, in the episode The Old Man and the Lisa, where she works with Mr. Burns, and it looks like Mr. Burns has turned over a new leaf, but actually by becoming like ultra good, he actually turns out to be ultra evil, but Lisa's able to kind of keep kind of moral high ground and become that kind of strong moral compass for the rest of the family. We have Bart kind of realizing the importance of Santa's little helper in his life in the episode The Canine Mutiny, and just how much the unconditional love from Santa's little helper means to him and how important he is. We get Marge as well, Marge understanding that as much as she wants to give advice, she can't always help everybody in every situation. In the episode in Marge We Trust, where she ends up giving horrific advice to Ned Flanders, where he ends up trapped by baboons. And even outside of the family, we get to see some of the other important characters grow. And so speaking of Ned Flanders, we get to see the kind of really dark side that kind of resides behind his like positivity and his kind of gaiety in the episode Hurricane Neddy, and we see this just really dark and like twisted side to him, which is great to see. And then finally as well, for this season, it had some really lasting effects on the series series as a whole, just in some of the kind of plot points that happens. So, for instance, in A Millhouse Divided, Millhouse's parents, Kirk and Luann, get divorced, which kind of became a long-running thing in the series past season 8. We get the start of the kind of Lisa and Nelson romance arc, which starts in Lisa's date with Destiny. And then finally as well, we have the Skinner and Krabappel starting their relationship in Grade School Confidential. And these were all kind of, sort of arcs that would kind of stay and remain in the series moving forward. And they all started in season 8. So it had a really long-lasting effect. But honestly, like, I think to pick some highlights, I mean, there's so many great episodes, it's difficult to pick highlights. I mean, as I said at the start, Homer's Enemy for me, I think, is my favourite episode of The Simpsons. I think it's just such a funny episode with such great gags, and just Frank Grimes is such a great character, and I love the way he's juxtaposed against Homer, and it's just great. But even things like Mountain of Madness with Homer and Mr. Burns is great. In Marge We Trust is fantastic. Kind of we see another side of Reverend Lovejoy as well, which is good. It's just the season is just jam-packed with amazing episodes, and I think it really was the height of The Simpsons. And, if I was going to go back and watch a season of The Simpsons, it would be season 8, without a question.
It is definitely. I'm just looking through the list of them, like, just now. You're completely right. There's just so many, like, iconic episodes there. You've got, as you said, you've got the Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie show. I was going to say the Mary Poppins parody one, but I've just read the title. There's like...
Go and read it out.
Simpson Califragilisticexpiala Annoyed Grunts. Lucius? Is that... Are you supposed to go with Simpson Califragilisticexpiala? Oh, Lucius. Like, I don't know. It just says annoyed grunt in brackets. No, absolutely. I mean, as you said, there's... Oh, God, there's just so many episodes. You were saying before that Homer's Enemy, is that the one with Frank Grimes?
Yeah.
Why is that one your favourite in particular?
I just think Homer's my favourite character in The Simpsons. So I always really always kind of gravitated to Homer-centric episodes. And there's just something about this one. I think it's just the way that we never really stop to think that, for as much of like a kind of like doofus and, as dumb as Homer is, like we don't appreciate maybe how lucky he has been. And it's funny to see, it's funny to view his life that way and be like, how the hell has he ended up with all these things? How does he keep his job? How does he have this like nice house and like this like loving family and everything? And I love just the character of Frank Grimes coming in, who's just had to like toil every day of his life to achieve like this briefcase and this haircut. He meets like his antithesis in Homer, and I just think it's just so funny. But it also kind of speaks as well to kind of the good nature of Homer and the fact that his co-workers and everything do just rally around him, even when he's in like a child, even when he's winning like a child's building competition and stuff. They do have a genuine fondness for him. So I think you just get to see a kind of lot of different sides of Homer. I just think it's such a well-written episode, and it builds so fantastically to Frank Grimes' like breakdown, which I think is still just one of the funniest things I've ever seen, where he just loses it and he just tries to act like Homer, and then you realize that there can only ever really be one Homer Simpson because nobody else can survive going through that. And I think the episode builds so amazingly. It's got if I think of funny moments from Simpsons, it's like I always come back to the episode of Frank Grimes just like laughing as he sent Homer off to like to go to build for the kids competition. Then he's just laughing maniacally, and Homer just backs straight into his car and wrecks it. It's just so many bits in there. It's just such a comedic masterpiece to me.
What's particularly great about that episode, though, as well, looking back at it now, as opposed to when I watched it when I was younger, where when I was younger, I kind of thought this Grimes guy was weird. Like, why is he being so confrontational to Homer? What's Homer done wrong here? But being older and seeing this man who bumbled his way into quite a senior position in this company, it's a one working family member, and yet they have this very large house that he's been able to afford, have steak and lobster dinners and that kind of stuff on a semi-regular basis. How has his life come to that point? And you're sort of comparing it with where we are now and going, yeah, how was Homer able to do all of this? And why can't I have that? So I think it hits differently now than it did when I was younger, for sure. I don't know if you guys have a similar reaction now watching it as opposed to when you were younger.
It's definitely added another layer to my enjoyment of the episode, without a doubt. Because I think I agree. When I was a kid, it was just the kind of like gags and just the comedy of it that I really responded to. But you're totally right in that growing older, you do get a much more get a better appreciation for the kind of the undertones to it and the kind of narrative.
Because, I mean, it is kind of that central theme, isn't it, of we've all been there when you're going through, say, for example, university or school or something, where there's that one guy that, manages to coast through everything effortlessly, and they put in the bare minimum amount. You're like, how the hell are they up there and you're still down here? And that's obviously like a minor thing compared to like the Homer Simpsons of the world and things like that. But you definitely appreciate this episode the older you get, don't you?
No doubt.
And Greenshield, is there any, before we move on to yours, is there any kind of final points you want to make about this season?
Yeah, there's a couple actually, because you didn't mention a couple of episodes that I would like to sort of highlight, which was Bart After Dark, where Bart works at that burlesque house, and there's an excellent musical number. There's the classic scene, which has now been used as a big gif of Abe walking into the establishment, seeing Bart, and then is immediately turning around and walking away.
That's brilliant.
It's such a great piece of animation. I think that's one of my favorite bits from the show. I think it's so good. The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie show is a classic episode of the season where they kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the animation industry and going into sort of adding in these extra characters and what it can do to a series, and Homer's kind of experience working there, and then having like the character be written off in the most ridiculous way.
In my defense, there are so many great episodes in this season. You're right in that you're right to highlight both of those because they are fantastic. They're fantastic as well. But it just goes to my point that this is full of quote unquote bangers. It's just amazing. I can't think of an episode in the season that I wouldn't watch. I agree that there's some that are better than others, but I don't think there's one in the season that I would look at and be like, well, I'm not watching that.
That's fair. I think you can make that argument for quite a few of the seasons where it's a case of I would rather watch this other episode, but I'm not going to necessarily skip it.
I was going to say not even the Simpsons spin-off Showcase.
I'd probably still even watch that. Again, it wouldn't be my first choice, but
I forgot that was the one where Chief Wiggum and Skinner are detectives.
Yeah.
And the Love-Matic one. But yeah, no, you're totally right, Adam. Just an absolute fantastic season filled with absolute golden moments. Before we wrap up, which obviously we can't wrap up yet because Greenshield, you have your choice next, so without any further ado, I'm going to give it to you this time.
Yeah, for sure. We've done season 7, we've done season 8, and on theme, I'm moving on and doing season 9. I was toing and froing about which of these seasons was my favorite. It took me a fair bit of time to try and figure out which one I thought had the most episodes that I love in it, and there are cases for each of the seasons that you both mentioned, and for another season that I'll mention after this one as an honorable mention. But season 9, I think, has more episodes that I will consistently go back to and rewatch than any other season. I think it has the most rewatchability of any of these seasons because of these episodes. I love a lot of this other seasons and episodes and other seasons that you mentioned, but I think episode for episode, this has the greatest rewatch factor. It starts off with the city of New York versus Homer Simpson, which is such a hilarious episode where Homer has a horrendous time trying to get his car back from the city of New York and having all these exploits go on while he's there, and given an additional perspective that this took place before the events of 9/11, and the car was situated between the two towers in the World Trade Center, so there were jokes made about the World Trade Center in the episode. There was a great joke about with the what's it called, the food that he has, like
Calculash.
Calgalash, thank you. And then he said, do you have anything to wash this down with? And he goes, I have Mountain Dew or crab juice. And Homer goes, ew, oh, disgusting. I'll have the crab juice, please. Which is just such a funny joke. I love that so much. And then you have the really kind of hard-hitting episodes like Lisa's Sax, which I actually watched last night. My partner and I watched that together, and that's such a sweet episode where you find out the origin of Lisa getting her saxophone. And you kind of have that also almost an origin story of Bart becoming who he was at school as well, which is very, very fun and cute. Another highlight is Reality Bites, where Marge becomes a real estate agent and Homer gets a sports car that belonged to the criminal Snake. Oh, and just before I forget, in the New York episode, there's the introduction of Duffman as a character who I didn't realize it took until season 9 to introduce him, but
really,
the recurring character Duffman is introduced in that episode in season 9.
Oh my god!
Yeah, that really surprised me. I know he's such a fun character. Reality Bites, fantastic episode. Joy of the Sect is one of my favorite episodes in the entire show, where they join like a cult. and you have a great kind of back and forth with Willie and Reverend Lovejoy, where Reverend Lovejoy's trying to knock Homer out with a bat, and Willie says, "Give it here, you noodle-armed choir boy," which is such a fantastic line. I love quoting that. The hover bikes joke where Marge fakes hover bikes. Another Willie moment where he says that he'll capture him for 20, kill him for 75, and then he says, no, just the capturing. He says, all right, I'll throw in the killing for 3. And I love that one. Das Bus is a really underrated one where the kids all get trapped on an island and have to fend for themselves on the island. And it's kind of like a Lord of the Flies situation. Meanwhile, this other side story is Homer setting up his own company, which makes zero sense, and Bill Gates comes in and tries to destroy it. Then we have Lisa the Simpson, which is a really another sweet episode where Lisa kind of understands her position in the family and what being a Simpson means. My favorite episode, Simpson Tide. I will watch this episode more than any other episode. It is so funny. The amount of jokes they managed to fit in. The story itself is stupid. There's very little to it, but they managed to squeeze in a gag in every scene, and I cannot stop laughing watching this episode. The whole bit with all the weird submarine jokes, and with the recruitment agent trying to bring Homer in, and Homer's trying to read out the question that's crossed out because it asks if he's gay, and the guy is saying like, "Do not read that, I could go to jail." And then like afterwards Homer goes, "What a nice guy. Wonder if he's gay." There's so much in the season that is just so wonderful. Trouble with Trillions, another great one. Trash of the Titans, I know, is a Satsunami's favorites.
You know it.
Yeah. King of the Hill is a great one where Homer climbs up the Murder Horn mountain, which is hilarious. And Lost Our Lisa, where Lisa travels to a museum at a strange part of Springfield by herself and gets lost. There's so many fantastic episodes there. Those are just the ones I highlighted as my favorites, but there are another 12 or so episodes I didn't mention there. This season has so many episodes with great musical numbers as well. Thinking about Trash of the Titans, All Singing, All Dancing had some great stuff on it, and there was one other that had an absolutely fantastic musical number. The Last Temptation of Krusty. Crust, I think, has the Bring in the Clowns, which is great. Yeah, I think that's it in terms. Oh, and this is the season that has Principal and the Pauper, which I didn't highlight it because it's not one of my favorites, but it gets a bad rap. People often say it's one of like the episodes where the show starts going downhill. I love that episode. I think it's very fun. I think it's interesting. You get to see the sort of other side of Skinner and like a strange origin of Skinner. And Martin Sheen is fantastic as the real Seymour Skinner. But what did you guys think of it?
I just want to say, for legal reasons, that was a joke. Nah, I'm only kidding. I'm just thinking back to the Principal and the Pauper comment there, because I'm like, oh god, we're going to be speedrun cancelled. Nah, jokes aside, I actually think there's one episode that's worse than Principal and the Pauper. I do not like All Singing, All Dancing.
No?
I honestly think, and I don't know why, like when I was younger, maybe I have to go back and rewatch it, so I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, but this episode just really stuck out to me as just being one of these, like, obviously because it was a flashback episode, which I don't like at the best of times, but just All Singing, All Dancing, I don't know what it was. It is one that I've never liked, and I know that's kind of the only negativity we've really had in this episode, so apologies, but I don't see how that one kind of gets a pass, and Principal and the Pauper, so like I get why people don't like it, but I mean at the end of the day, like that's the thing about The Simpsons, the status quo always has to be kind of reset by the end of it, and of course that's what they do anyway. Principal Skinner is back to what he is, and even I think Matt Groening actually said that as well. This is one of his least favourite episodes, and all I can keep thinking is, then why did you like allow it to be created, and put to that stage? Yeah, I don't know.
He had other things on his mind.
Yeah, like the rest of The Simpsons.
He had Futurama to create.
Oh, of course, yeah. That old indie gem. And the outlines of Disenchanted, probably. Matt Groening bashing aside there, I totally agree. I think this season is absolutely filled to the brim with absolutely fantastic episodes. There's even one episode, I have to say, which I do think is quite emotional, even though it's mainly comedy, obviously. But say the episode Lisa the Skeptic, I actually think that's a really interesting episode. Just the fact, again, going back to some of the episodes I brought up in the past, Bart sells his soul and things, because obviously, you know, we focus on this American family who go to church and things, and sometimes those episodes are quite interesting because, especially with Lisa starts, you know, saying, oh, I can't believe people think that angels exist and things, and then Marge has like quite a frank discussion with her to say, oh no, I believe in them. And you know, like, it's that kind of her being a bit more open-minded, if that makes sense, rather than being like completely dismissive. And it is like two sides of the coin. It's like people who are blindly rejecting and blindly believing, and then there's that kind of arbiter in the middle, with Marge saying, oh, maybe it is, maybe it's not, you know. And I thought that kind of aspect was quite interesting. I'm not saying it's the best episode, it's got some great moments. One of my favourite parts is actually see when Lisa's going to actually smash the angel, and she's walking by very slowly with the crowbar, and Homer's
Somebody
sitting
stop her!
yeah, Homer's just sitting there, just like, somebody stop her. He's just in arm's reach. I don't know why that cracks me up all the time.
I actually watched that episode last night. It was one of two episodes that I watched last night of the season, that was one of them. And I didn't mention it as one of my favorites because I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites of the season, but it is an absolutely fantastic one. I think there was quite a few I didn't mention. I think Bart Carney is a very funny one, and Girly Edition, where Bart and Lisa have the news anchor position on the children's news show. Those are all really, really classic episodes. But I just picked about 9 or 10 from the season that I thought really sort of shone to me. I think Lisa the Skeptic is a brilliant one, a bit like what you mentioned earlier with Bart sells his soul, that there is a philosophical or theological argument in the episodes and that you have Lisa and Marge kind of coming to blows in words, where Marge says, if you can't take a little leap of faith every once in a while, then I feel sorry for you. And Lisa says, no, Mom, I feel sorry for you. And that just seems so, for a young girl and her mother to be having that kind of dialogue with each other, it's very kind of hard hitting. It's quite stark. And so I think that this season doesn't have as many heartfelt episodes as some of the others. I think it's more of a comedic season than some of the others, but I think it is what I want and what I think of when I think of The Simpsons. I think the end of Lisa's sax, where you get the montage of all the other times where she's played her saxophone throughout the show, is just so beautiful. And the song she plays, I can never remember the name of it, and it's such a wonderful song.
And kind of going off on one of your points there, you of course mentioned The Joy of Sect, which again I totally agree, fantastic episode, and there's just so many good ones. But the one I want to point at is the 200th episode of The Simpsons, that of course being Trash of the Titans. I have to admit, bit of a guilty pleasure, because on the one hand, you could easily say that Trash of the Titans does like a lot of similar things to like the new seasons, where they take like a very small premise and they completely blow it out of proportion, and you know, they've got the celebrity voices coming in being themselves. But I have to admit, for this one, I think it actually does work. Like, it's not perfect. The whole premise is about Homer becoming is it the sanitation minister or something like that?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah, let's just the sanitation something, but he ends up getting all the garbage men coming in, and they're all in their Stark uniforms. But I mean, there's so many memorable moments in this one. There's of course the Happy Love Day everyone, which is something I still bring up to this day. There's the U2 one where he tries to blag his way through by saying he is the Potato Man, and of course they say, where the hell have you been? And it's just something so like, it's so silly that it just comes right around to being funny again. Of course, you got Steve Martin as well.
I was going to say, one thing that this season does better than the others, and I think it's something that the later seasons actually work quite well on, and it's one of the reasons why I enjoy the later seasons, is the subverted humor. The jokes you're expecting to be made then get subverted, and it's a different joke that it's made, and that kind of like takes you aback, and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming, that's my favorite kind of humor, where a joke takes a different direction from what you expected it to. That something that seems so obvious then gets subverted. And so season 9 has a lot of those kinds of jokes, and I think I'll mention it briefly now, but season 12, I think, is one of the best seasons for those kinds of jokes, that there are so much subverted humor in season 12. I don't know how you guys feel about that kind of humor and where Simpsons kind of went in that direction.
I have to admit, this season, looking at all the episodes from this season, this is where I start my kind of knowledge of The Simpsons starts to fade. And I recognize some of the episodes this season, but there's a lot I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen that. But I totally agree, there are some great ones in this one. I really love this little Wiggy. I mean, the one with Bart kind of becomes friends with Ralph Wiggum. Me and my fiance often do the "go fish" at each other just at random points. Lines Ralph Wiggum says during the episode. You mentioned it, I think, when you were talking about the season about Trouble with Trillions. I think is a great one, and I also quite like the Cartridge Family, the one where Homer gets a gun, joins the NRA and everything. I think that's a really funny one. But this is kind of where my knowledge of The Simpsons starts to fade. I don't really know. I don't really feel like I'm qualified to say how the quality of the series went after this, but just on a personal note, this is kind of where I kind of left off in my sort of journey with The Simpsons.
I have to admit, I think, and again, this could be like a whole other episode in its own right, which it probably will be. I think that The Simpsons started to kind of become a bit more cartoony, if that makes sense. And I get it. The Simpsons is a cartoon and everything, and at the end of the day, the kind of situations that these characters get into, they're over the top, they're bombastic, they're, memorable moments. Like, for example, I was watching one from, I think it's season 4, but I could be wrong, it's the Mr. Plow one. Really just stupid moments like that, or the one where Marge becomes like the lead in a plane. They were over the top scenarios, but at the same time, they had that kind of human element that grounded them. And I mean, as I said in season 7, most of the things, although they were silly, they were kind of grounded by something that the audience could relate to. And I feel as if with kind of season 12 onwards, they started, because like before I go on, I just want to say there's like a huge discussion about this online about a thing called Zombie Simpsons. I think the author of that blog says, Zombie Simpsons started after Principal and the Pauper. It's all very subjective about when this all started, but it starts to talk about kind of changes in the characters and things. And I think as well, that was when they started getting a lot more celebrity voice actors in. One of my least favourite episodes in Greenshield, you might be able to tell me when this was, because I can't remember. But do you remember what season the episode is where they go to London?
Season 13 or 14, I think.
Yeah, it was definitely around that time. I think that is probably what sums up everything that's wrong with The Simpsons. You had all these celebrities that came in, like J.K. Rowling, Tony Blair for some weird reason, the UK's former Prime Minister, just for anyone keeping count, Ian McKellen as well. I think there might have been a couple others, but they were just there, and they go and they get into like these shenanigans and everything, and none of the jokes hit. There wasn't any. Again, all of these episodes that you, Adam, and you, Greenshield, have said, they're all memorable for their different things, but I feel as if season kind of 12 onwards was that kind of transitional period where they started to just say, okay, we've got like this voice actor from like Lady Gaga, for example, which is an infamously bad episode. Have you seen that one, Greenshield, actually?
I've seen bits of it. I did not enjoy it. I think The Simpsons have had celebrity voice stars for a long time, but they would very rarely play themselves. They would usually play a character who just has their voice. For example, Principal and the Pauper had Martin Sheen voicing the real Seymour Skinner. It wasn't Martin Sheen voicing Martin Sheen or playing Martin Sheen. They had a actor come in to voice a character, and they've been doing that for years and years and years. With The Simpsons becoming more popular, more actors wanted to come in and lend their voice to the roles. But then when they had actors more famous than the show, then they would have them just be themselves. That you then feel like they're it's becoming a bit more metaphysical, and they aren't diving into that as much anymore. We're starting to get into where Simpsons went downhill as opposed to the seasons we're talking about, which we could make an entire other podcast episode about. But yeah, just kind of getting back into some of the earlier seasons, some sort of honorable mentions. I don't know if you guys have any you want to bring up, but I would like to pay homage to season 6, which I think encapsulates everything that we've talked about in season 7, 8, and 9. I don't think it has as many hard-hitting episodes and as many funny episodes as necessarily season 7, 8, and 9 together, but you have things like Itchy and Scratchy Land, where you have the Bort license plate joke and loads loads of other really great bits, like they park in the Itchy lot, and they say, remember we parked in the Itchy lot. You zoomed out and there's just a gigantic parking lot, so they're definitely going to lose their car. It has a Maggie Makes 3, which is just such a wonderful, like, heartfelt episode where you have the ending with Homer having the Maggie pictures all over his office, which is just so beautiful, so sweet. It goes down as one of the sweetest episodes in The Simpsons. You have Bart versus Australia, which is such a funny destination episode with like so many gags per scene. So that's one of my favorite episodes. You have 2001 Greyhounds, which has loads of very fun scenes and such a great musical number with Burns singing about making different animals into different items of clothing. Springfield Connection, where Marge becomes a cop. Lemon of Troy. How often do we quote like Lemon of Troy? It's such a fun episode. And then that season ends with Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1, which I think is one of the only, if not the only, two-parter in The Simpsons. And the fact that it ends a season with one and then starts the following season with the next episode is so interesting and so different. I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
Who Shot Mr. Burns, I think, is one of the best episodes
Absolutely.
of The Simpsons. I agree. I really love season 6 as well, just looking through the episode list there. But yeah, I think it has the best ending to a season because I love that episode.
Of course, we were all too young to take part in the craze right enough, because apparently, and I remember this from the DVDs, there were actually adverts at the time on TV for Who Shot Mr. Burns, and I think it was primarily Butterfingers, which of course isn't very popular in the UK. I can't speak for Canada, but I know they were popular in the US, and because of that, I think The Simpsons Butterfingers rather, sponsored The Simpsons, and they had like all the tie-in things, and they had the who do you think shot Mr. Burns and everything, and who did this and who did that, and it was just really interesting to look back in this kind of era in The Simpsons and see like how everybody was gripped by these episodes and its kind of cultural impact on the entertainment scene, because I mean obviously every couple of years you do get that moment in a TV show, but no, I agree with you, Greenshield. I think season 6 is a absolutely fantastic one. Is there any other ones you want to point out?
Well, I was just going to quickly say, going back on what Adam said about it being the strongest end to season, looking at how each of our seasons that we picked ends. Season 7 has Summer of 4 featuring 2. I don't actually remember what happens in that episode. The Secret War of Lisa Simpson was season 8, and Natural Born Kisses was season 9. I don't think any of those were particularly strong season enders. I don't think they were necessarily bad episodes. I remember what happened in the Summer of 4 featuring 2, but I think season 6 definitely does have the strongest ending of those 4 seasons at least. I'd have to look at some of the other seasons to see if they have any better season enders, but I think that's probably claiming the top place.
Oh, it's definitely the most iconic one by far. I honestly can't think of there might be a better or maybe funnier episode, but I honestly can't think off the top of my head what could have topped that, both in terms of drama, in terms of impact and everything. I mean, even to this day, when you do think of The Simpsons, that is one of the episodes that does pop up. You know, it's that season 6 finale. I can only imagine what people must have been thinking when season 6 ended, and then they had to wait all that time to find out who actually shot Mr. Burns. Spoilers, it was Waylon Smithers, totally. Simpson fans will get it, just trust me on it, because I know some people will be like, wait, isn't it? And I'm like, yes, I know. But I would actually go further back, and maybe this is nostalgia talking, but one of the very first seasons I ever got into with this show was season 3. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's as good as season 6 through 9. I think their episodes are on a completely different level. But at the same time, there are some like very hard-hitting episodes in this one. Maybe not to the same extent, but you've got episodes like When Flanders Failed, which is the one where, of course, Flanders has his left-handed shop, the leftorium, yeah. And, of course, Homer, jokes and says, oh, I hope it doesn't go under, and he wishes for that in a kind of sadistic way. And this is what I love about this episode, because in a sadistic way, Homer's getting exactly what he wants. He sees his neighbour trying to pursue his dream, absolutely failing, and thinking, haha, serves him right. And then he sees the kind of fallout for his family and everything, and he has a heart-to-heart with them. And, he ends up like rallying everyone in town, and you actually get like a parody of It's a Wonderful Life, nearly scene for scene at one point. It's actually really interesting, but Yeah, that's just such a touching scene, where you think, oh, everyone's abandoned them, and then they all rally to him. It is absolutely fantastic. You got Lisa's pony as well, which I have to admit, the majority of that episode isn't great, but considering, again, you see Homer taking on the role of, he takes several jobs on just to keep his little girl's dream, alive, and then she kind of realises that things have to be sacrificed for them to be happy and everything. Of course, not a touching episode, but you've got Flaming Moe's, which is just like a really funny one. I honestly think that seasons, I would say 3 to 5 were probably, although they were probably the most memorable to me, I would say, because, you obviously had like the Camp Krusty one, you had the one where Marge becomes, is it Blanche Dubois? And like, I can't even remember what the musical it is she's in. Do you remember that episode though?
The Streetcar Named Desire.
That's the one, thank you. Thank you, Adam, for saving me there with your vast knowledge of musicals.
I watched the episode so many times, and it wasn't until after I studied Streetcar Named Desire in English class in high school that I fully understood what a lot of the jokes in that episode were. There's an entire song about how you can always trust a little help from a stranger, and like I did not realize until after I'd studied the book that it was all about like the fact that one of the main characters in the story like essentially prostituted herself.
The Simpsons, family friendly content all around. But Adam, is there any kind of honourable mentions you want to bring up before we wrap up?
Yeah, honestly, I'd probably pick season 6 or 7, but I was just looking at season 5 there, because I remember being some episodes that I loved in season 5, so I'll pick season 5, something different. So you have that great episode where Homer becomes best friends with Ned Flanders, and there's that fantastic Terminator 2 scene where he's chasing after the Flanders car.
Of course you would bring that up.
I think it's a great episode. There's the one Lady Bouvier's Lover, which is the kind of like parody of that film The Graduate from like the 60s, where it's the kind of love triangle between Marge's mum, Homer's dad, and Mr. Burns. It ends with like Grandpa Simpson, like, Mrs. Bouvier, as he like falls through the glass plate and then runs up to her. We've got the one where Bart gets an elephant. It's good. Homer goes to space. Deep Space Homer, that one's called. There's the one with Mr. Burns' Casino, which I always quite liked when I was younger. That's got quite a good Treehouse of Horror, I think, as well. Where like Homer sells his soul for a donut.
I like The Boy Who Knew Too Much from season 5, where Bart witnesses the crime with Mayor Quimby's nephew and the clumsy French butler.
The chowdering, yeah.
Yeah, chowder. Chowder.
Yeah, I thought there was some good. It's not my favorite. Again, I don't think I've seen all the episodes from it, so I wouldn't pick it as my favorite. But there's also Cape Fear as well with quite a good Sideshow Bob one. Is that the one where he stands on all the rakes?
It is. I think that might be the beginning of the rake joke that was became a recurring pun around Sideshow Bob.
That's a great scene. So yeah, I'll give season 5 some props.
Season 5 and season 4, I think, definitely deserve some honorable mentions. As you said, I love the Lisa versus Malibu Stacy episode as a particular one from season 5, especially when there's the scene where Lisa goes to see Waylon Smithers because he's like an utmost expert on Malibu Stacy, this sort of Barbie reference. Essentially, we see that Smithers' screensaver is Mr. Burns like half naked, and he goes, "Smithers, you turn me on." One
of my favourite moments in that as well was see when Lisa tries so hard to make like this, I was about to say action figure, this doll that appeals to everyone, and they just bring out Malibu Stacy with a hat. And I think to this day, even with like video games and things where they bring out such a pointless cosmetic you have to pay for, and Lisa's saying like, no, don't buy it, it's just the same, silly model, it's the same doll, it's not like something new. And then Waylon, of all people, it's not the girls, it's not the children, it's Waylon. It's like, but she's got a new hat, I want it. At the end of the day, there's so many quotes you could have, or you could pluck from this particular age of The Simpsons. It's just absolutely fantastic. But I think we could honestly do like a good couple more episodes on The Simpsons by far. Would you, Adam and Greenshield, be up for that one day?
Never say never.
I'm always up to talk about The Simpsons, so yeah, for sure.
I was trying to think of like a reference there, but I think I'm all Simpsoned out. It's just come full circle, and it's just like, in the Simpsons film where it's just the monkey like clapping the cymbals. It's just like, yeah. But honestly, guys, thank you again so much for coming on and waxing lyrical about The Simpsons.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, as always, if you want to listen to more of our opinions on gaming, films, and particularly anime under the Satsunami sub-series, you can of course check us out on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube as well, and really any good podcast app. So look for the Red Panda under the name Satsunami, and we'll see you there. But until then, thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Stay safe, stay awesome, and most importantly,
Eat my
stay...
shorts.
Why, you little...